Hi guys, what's up? Welcome to episode 2 of our official podcast with the title Green Jeans.
Green jeans, I love it.
Jeans with a G-E-N-E-S, not jeans like you wear, because activism's in our DNA.
Let me just say, she's saying that because I said when we came up with the name and this was selected that we should come out with some signature green jeans for sale. And she said, Mom, you know that it's jeans spelled with a G-E, don't you? And I said, I sure do, but I still want some signature green jeans to wear. Just a little side note.
Maybe we'll start a merch line if this takes off. I am your co-host, Anneke Van Rossum, joined by my other co-host,
Maya Van Rossum.
And if you don't know, Maya is my mother. I am Anneke, and this podcast is all about generational activism, how conversations about the environment, some are the same, some are different. So this episode, we're going to get into talking about methane.
Yes. And so I was thinking about this methane show, which is a good extension of last week's show, where we were talking about climate change. And you know what popped into my mind, Anneke, because it's been a real powerful couple of weeks here in the United States and nationally, thinking about methane and the climate crisis, and what methane means for the climate crisis. And all I can come up with for a descriptor of the government officials here in the US is split personality. We got lots of great rhetoric going on, but when it comes to putting in place real meaningful change to address methane in order to help address the climate crisis, they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, saying good things on one side, but not doing good things on the other. And it's really kind of sad.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I get confused because I don't really know the narrative around methane specifically. I feel like my generation is used to I think since climate change came into the conversation since I was a kid, it's like the picture of the greenhouse and it's like the little animated arrows and it's just greenhouse gas. So I don't actually know, I know a little bit about methane. I don't think I know how much government officials are like methane. They just throw that greenhouse gas in there. And obviously methane's one of the worst ones.
Yeah. So, and actually you say obviously, but you're right. For most people, the way government has been talking, it's actually not obvious. So, you know, when we talk about climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, there are a number of really key ones. And mostly what government officials talk about is carbon. And they talk about carbon in a 100-year time frame. And so that when we have carbon emissions and we look out over 100 years, carbon is the most impactful greenhouse gas emission. But hopefully what people are finally starting to hear come out of not just the mouths of scientists, but also the mouths of politicians and the press, is that we don't have 100 years in order to best address the climate crisis. So we are not sacrificing future generations to the worst devastating ramifications of the climate crisis, whether you're talking about storms or drought or changed ecosystems or the spread of illness and viruses. We actually have 10 years, maybe 20, really 10, right? By 2030, we really have to take swift action. And so when you look at that 10 to 20 year time frame, the most potent greenhouse gas emission is methane. Methane is actually 86 times more potent, so in other words, worse, for advancing the climate crisis than carbon. And so methane is where we really need to be focusing a lot of our energy in terms of our energy, our personal energy, our political energy, in terms of getting our arms around what is happening and averting climate crisis. So that's where methane comes into play. And methane, you know, we hear a lot about natural gas and fracking. What is natural gas? What is fracked gas? methane. And the process of extracting fracked gas out of the earth results in methane emissions, carbon emissions, and other climate changing emissions, along with pollution.
What's that like when for people that don't know, they have these really cool cameras that it's not like infrared, but it's something it captures like what the human what?
A FLIR camera.
A FLIR camera. Okay. So it captures what like we can't see with human eyes. So is that when we've seen it? So like if you looked at it normally with people eyes, there's nothing. And then when you and I have seen those videos, it's like these big, scary plumes. And it's usually, the camera's usually in like black and white type of thing. Is that methane, those big plumes, or is that like a multitude of stuff?
I think it's methane and other air emissions that you can't see with the naked eye. But yeah, you've got the right idea. So whether you're talking about looking through a camera or whether you hear about it from the mouths of press or politicians, people aren't seeing or hearing about methane. They're seeing and hearing about other things. But methane is really where we need to be spending our attention. And the really gross part about this conversation, and I mean gross as in throw up gross, is that, you know, we at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, right, my organization that I've been leading for the last 27 years, other powerful environmental organizations and scientists like Dr. Anthony Ingraffia and Dr. Howarth have been screaming from the rooftops that we need to be focused on methane for the last decade. But it is only now that finally the IPCC, international experts, and again, press and politicians are finally acknowledging that where we need to be focusing our energy is thinking a lot about methane. And what does that mean? That means fossil fuel industry. That means fracking. That means fracking natural gas from shale. We've got to put an end to that practice and continuing to drill more and more wells because they are a primary source of the methane emissions that are advancing the climate crisis.
So did you guys, like at Delaware Riverkeeper Network and then colleagues, did you have that, not the exact same information now, but did you have kind of that information when you guys were starting those battles? Cause like, I don't know, in the 90s?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, if you read my book, The Green Amendment, right? You don't have to date me. I'm the youngest person in the room all the time. Everybody knows that. But if you read the Green Amendment in my chapter on fracking, you know, I talk about Dr. Ingraffia, I talk about Dr. Howarth, I talk about their research and how they have been trying to point the finger at methane, they and other truthful scientific leaders. And throughout that time, how they have been attacked for trying to focus on methane and the need to end fracking and fracked gas. They have been attacked. And then, of course, you've had biostitutes, right? Faux scientists, bought and paid for science coming out of the industry that has been saying, no, nothing to see here. And it's just striking to me that I and colleague environmental leaders have been, you know, again, screaming from the rooftops about the importance of addressing methane, which means ending fracking and fracked gas fossil fuels, along with some other things, the pipelines and the compressor stations that transport the gas. We've been trying to point the finger in this direction for so long, and the politicians have been unwilling to listen. So now, finally, they're listening. The scientists, you know, international scientists focused on the climate crisis are finally highlighting methane as a key problem, a needed area of focus. And again, that means fossil fuels in large part. And so we have that really important evolution. But at the very same time, as you know, Anneke, you joined me listening to a court case where the attorneys for my organization, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, were arguing against a fracked gas pipeline. The other side of the legal table was the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And there, right, we still have FERC we
Thumbs
still
down.
have FERC, you know, trying to pretend like climate change is not a needed area of focus as they go forth approving the pipelines, which are what are exacerbating, increasing, causing more and more fracking. So it just sort of breaks my brain. So when we talk about methane, right? Methane is a climate changing emission that is really powerful in a 10-year time frame. But what we really are talking about when we hear methane is we really are talking about fracking and fossil fuels and our need to change to a truly clean energy future.
Well, and I was actually listening when we were listening to that case. I was FERC is so fake. FERC is fake. That's what but I remember, like, I think my friends showed me, and then I don't know if I sent it to you, but there was a YouTube video, and I think it was one of the FERC commissioners. I think he's a new one. I can't remember. And he had this whole thing. So if you don't know, Mom, there's this woman, Megan The Stallion. She's great. She's awesome. And she has all these wonderful, empowering rap songs. You might not like her music, but I'm
sure I would like her music. I just might not listen to it all the time.
I know if I played it for you, I bet you actually would. So she has this song called Hot Girl Summer. And or she had this thing like Hot Girl Summer. It turned into this whole, like Hot Girl Summer is like being single, like being yourself, like I don't know. It's really cool. Anyways, it was like a whole theme in quarantine too. It was like Hot Girl Summer. But FERC, one of the commissioners took it and was like, it's hot FERC summer. And then went on this whole thing like about being like trying to be topical and then talking about FERC being cleaner and better. And so first off, yeah, we listened to that case and that was not part of their argument at all. They were going to do better. But I was just like, don't make a joke of it, dude. Like hot FERC summer. Oh, it's so funny. Like you are trying to push your responsibility by kind of making light of a very, very serious situation that your agency has like a big hand in causing, frankly. So I didn't even think it was funny. I thought it was really awful that he did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I think it's wicked. I think it's absolutely wicked that there are literally people losing their lives right now to the climate crisis. And there are young people like you looking to a very scary future. I know many people who are wondering whether or not they want to have children because they don't want to subject their children to that scary future. I mean, how sad. And then to have,
I think I debate that sometimes too. Like I really do go back and forth, and my friends know that I'm like, if I had a girl, I'd name her this, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, sometimes I am like, if I met a man in the next 5 years and was like, want to have kids, I feel like I might be like, I don't know. I generally don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea.
And I have to be honest, when I think about you and Vim, who is 10 years your junior, Vim, your brother, my son,
cute kid.
I am frightened for you, genuinely. And then, as you said, to have the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for those who don't know, that's FERC. FERC stands for Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and that is the agency with a tremendous amount of power, responsible for approving the pipelines that cross state boundaries, that connect up with the fracking wells and literally transport fracked gas from the frack fields to their final destination. And FERC is very, very powerful. In the last 30 plus years, FERC, by its own count, let alone by our count, has denied less than a handful of pipelines. They are literally a rubber stamp for the industry. And as you said, to have them make jokes about their rubber stamping the pipelines that are a direct cause of methane emissions and a direct cause of the fracking that is releasing these devastating climate changing emissions, right? And advancing this scary future, to have them act like it's fun and funny, I think is horribly abusive and absolutely wicked. And just for the audience, I just want to, offer up that what Anneke and I heard in this court case was when my attorneys, the Delaware Riverkeeper Network attorneys, were saying, look, you're approving, when you approve a pipeline, a fracked gas pipeline, in this case, it was the Adelphia pipeline, you are responsible for considering the climate changing impacts of the fracking that the pipeline will induce and the climate changing contributions of the end use of that fracked gas. And FERC literally said to us and the judges, well, that's a really difficult thing to figure out.
Oh, that was so annoying.
So therefore, we're going to assume 0, right? So because it's too hard for us, we get to ignore that it's happening. But you know what, right? The people who are literally dying right now because of the climate crisis, the people facing that scary future, right? You don't have the luxury of saying, oops, can't figure it out, so we're going to assume it's 0. Just wicked.
Well, and I think too, part of that was like maybe it was what the judge said to them too. I thought part of it was like the project is too big for us to get like an actual number. And I thought the judge, like, again, for people, because FERC is a government agency and their power comes from like what Congress has given to them. That's where they get their power from. And I thought the judge made a good point, which I think it was a female judge, saying like, you saying that is making a mockery of what Congress intended for you to do and the power. And I was like, yeah, if you guys are this big deal, and again, like this hot FERC summer, it's like, you're making light in a way that you're this really great agency and you're going to do all these things. And you have an attorney arguing that the project is too big. So how could you possibly do your job correctly? Then guess what? Don't do your job. Go away, FERC. No more pipelines. That's my solution for you. If you can't do it, we'll just get rid of pipelines. Awesome. That's what I think that said to me.
And you know what? And this new science about methane emissions, right? Not this new science, old science, but this sudden recognition by climate scientists, by politicians, by others. Well, the climate scientists have known about it, but they are finally putting it front and center in the way it should be when it talks to methane. All of that information, all of that reality joins you, Anneke, in that call to say, time to end the fracked gas pipelines, time to end the fracking. No more new fossil fuel fracking, fracked gas, shale gas wells, oil wells. What you have in the ground is what you got. Nothing new moving forward. Everything moving forward should be about conservation and clean and renewable energy. That's where we need to go. So you are on the right side of science, you are on the right side of politics, and the right side of history, Anneke.
And that's the thing though too, when that hot, again, it made me so mad, the hot FERC summer, like they had a little poster and everything that they marked up. I'm like, great use of money, guys. But there this guy was talking about, we're going to do better. And I'm like, this is BS. You're not going to do better. This is your little, like, you're saying it. And then, here we are. That was in July or August. Here we are 2-3 months later. And you have someone actively arguing for a pipeline. And you have been actively arguing that you did everything you needed to do for that pipeline to be sufficient. And it's just like, exactly, just more lies. And it's so annoying. But I'm curious, I do have a going back to like methane. Because, and maybe this is how we were talking last time about like industry narrative versus individual narrative. So I remember, I think probably in the last 10 years, I met a lot of people who became vegetarian, not for animal reasons, but specifically for combating the climate crisis reasons. And that being that cows and like the amount of cows we have produce methane. It's like cows and lambs is like the top one. And I remember, I think the first time that I was ever exposed, like in the outside world narrative, to be like methane is bad, is that magazine cover of the cow. I don't know if you've ever seen it, with like the big pink bag on its back. And so basically like capturing cow farts is like how we're going to stop methane.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, was that also part of, I guess when you guys were first learning about methane or kind of, trying to raise the alarm bells, I'm always curious if you were like combating that narrative too of like, it's not fracking, it's the cows. So just skip
It's-
the burger and like you'll save the planet. Don't worry about us over here in pipeline world.
You were being much more delicate. It's not about fracking, it's about farting, right? Like that's the narrative. I mean, look, agriculture has its role in the climate crisis.
Yeah.
And and that needs to be addressed. But this idea that it's all about farts versus fracking and bad industrial practices, right? And when we're talking about farming, we're talking about industrial farming.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the little local family farmer, but that's what the industry is trying to suggest, that people who are concerned about fracking and the climate crisis. And let's remember, when it comes to fracking, it's not just about the climate crisis. It's about spewing pollution into the air, into the water. It's about sucking up hundreds of millions of gallons of water in order to advance this industrial operation, fresh water that gets lost right from the surface of the earth because it gets put down into the shale and lost there. We're talking about thousands of truck trips on little local roads going by people's homes. We're talking about toxic wastewater so toxic, the industry doesn't have a good solution for what to do with it, except to inject it back into the ground and hope it gets locked away there. Or, great idea, let's use it as brine to salt the roads in the wintertime. Toxic brine that literally, right, is adding these dangerous toxins into our environment, into our communities, under the auspices of, ending car accidents. Fracking, giving families cancer, giving kids cancer, messing with people's lives in so many ways, destroying their property values, right? For those who are forced to live next to these frack sites. So I want to be very, very clear. When we're talking about fracking, we are talking about the climate crisis, but we are destroying people's lives and their health and local economies at the same time. And to try to suggest that we shouldn't be thinking about fracking, but we should be thinking about cow farts on the little local farmland.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is just such a false narrative. And you are right to make that equivalence to what we talked about last week. It's another way for the industry to evade responsibility and to try to put it back on somebody else's shoulders, rather than understanding that they are the problem. Industrial fracking, industrial fossil fuels, industrial farming. It's not the little local farmer and, farting cows or farting kids for that matter.
Well, and it's the local economy thing. I mean, yeah, it's not local farmers, who only have even 10 to 50 cows. I don't know. Like if they're spread out, it's fine. We're talking about factory farms, awful torturing animals. You have 1,000 cows. I mean, when I drove out to Santa Fe and I was driving through Texas, there were cow pastures that were really spread out, and then there weren't the indoor factory farms. But I remember there was one part I was driving through Texas and I was like, why is the ground black out there? Why is it so? Was there a fire? All this stuff. And I realized it was black when you got closer and closer. It was just cows packed together, outside, not in the indoor. But I mean, there was not, I could see no green either, because it's all trampled over, but also they were all packed in this tiny thing. So yeah, that's what we're not talking about, the small farmers, but the local economy thing. So when I was reading up on this, because I still have a lot of methane to learn about, learn about a lot of methane. But one of the interesting things, they were talking about how methane can affect local wildlife, and how methane regulations can help protect wildlife. And so, and how, whatever your thoughts are on hunting, there are hunting licenses and things like that that do contribute back to the conservation of states. And a lot of times those go directly towards conservation. But New Mexico in 2011 spent over $130 million getting economic benefit from their hunters. And then they lost a lot of that because they had to cut the licenses were cut by 11% and up to 50% in some areas. So they lost out on a lot of that revenue. And a lot of it was, I think, contributed to dwindling populations because of the increase of, the negative effects methane has. It's cyclical. Methane ruins the environment, that ruins it for the animals, and then it goes back to the people. And it's just this whole circle.
I was looking at some of the billboards that you see up from the fossil fuel industry. And one of them along these same lines, it says, that North Face puffer looks great on you. And it was made from fossil fuels, right? Like, which is just like such a gross suggestion that you can't have great fashion and be warm without destroying the earth for present and future generations, without destroying people's lives. I mean, it's really gross and it's really sad. But there are some others. There are some others. You're talking about Santa Fe. Here's one. Dear Santa Fe, you're fracking welcome, the industry says, because in New Mexico, the fossil fuel industry is largely responsible for education in the state. There's a lot of fracking, and there's new research actually coming out, about the devastating methane contributions from the Permian Basin, where the industry is literally fracking the crap out of local communities.
Is the Permian Basin, I think it's the Permian Basin, I think it's a methane cloud, like you can see from NASA or like from space, they can see the cloud over the Permian Basin, which is just like, the fact that no one's freaking out over that should be like, I don't know how, like that came out and no political official, I felt like, was like, that might be really bad. We should do something about it. Ugh.
Well, the interesting thing is that report came out in large part because of an environmental organization that has spent a lot of time defending the fossil fuel industry, or at least minimizing their impacts. And finally now, right, is coming forward and getting on board with reality that we do need to end fossil fuels. And I'm here to say, you cannot make fracking safe. Okay, there's no way to do it. And so when we have organizations like that one, which I'm not going to name because I don't want to throw shade, although I'm sure I'll spit it out at some point. But, we've got to not have environmental organizations being apologists for the industry and touting that, well, you can make it safe. You can't make it safe. There are many industries where you can definitely do it better. But when it comes to fracking and fossil fuels, there's no way to make it safe. And this idea that that there's new research showing suddenly now we can see methane and from outer space, and oh my gosh, look, NASA has been talking about methane and methane contributions to the climate crisis for years now. Again, as have other key scientists like Dr. Ingraffia and Dr. Howarth. So this is nothing new. It was almost like what was new about it was that this environmental organization, who has spent a lot of time touting that there are ways to make fracking safe, is suddenly coming on board with reality that no, the fracking industry spews a lot of methane along with other climate changing emissions, and it is bad, and it's time to take control. And that was, to me, that was really sad. Like when I see environmental organizations misusing their platform to help make excuses for industry to hang on to the bitter end of life, when really we need to end them now in order to save the true life of people and the environment and humans and animals and future generations. To me, it's really, it strikes at my heart because I spend so much time battling against those bad false messages.
They should not be having a hot FERC summer. No.
Not having a hot FERC summer. Now we're going to do a quick transition, right? We're coming to the end of our time, but we've got to go to our Green Amendment corner. So for those of you who don't know, while here in the United States of America, you have a right to free speech and freedom of religion, you have private property rights, you have gun rights. In the state of New York, you have the right to play bingo, all protected in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. You do not have a right to clean water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments. It's not your right, Might be a right in your heart, might be a right in your mind, might be a human right, but it's not an enforceable right because it's not in the Bill of Rights section of our state and federal constitutions. And our Green Amendment for the Generations movement changes all of that, and is really about getting those constitutional environmental rights in our constitutions. We're starting at the state level, will ultimately end up at the federal level. So right now, the state of New York is about to vote. Oh, very important. There are 2 states, but only 2 states that have a Green Amendment at this point, Pennsylvania and Montana. There's a whole rich story about that we'll talk about. I write about it in my book, The Green Amendment, or you can go to forthegenerations.org and learn all about it. But what I want to add from
And
Green Amendment,
order your own book. 100% of proceeds goes towards the Green Amendment movement.
oh, see, she's so good. Great little pitch there. That's right. So, but I want people to know we are just about a month out from the people of New York being able to vote whether or not they would like to have a constitutional right to clean air and water and a healthful environment added to the Bill of Rights section of their state constitution. How amazing is that, Anneke? Can you believe that it doesn't, that in New York, you have a constitutional right to play bingo, but not to clean water?
Yeah,
First off, how crazy is that?
Well, I remember where I went to college, Ithaca College, and we had like the environmental fair, and I made those posters just like get sign-ons for like petitions and all that. And I made the poster that was like, you have a right to bingo, but not a clean environment. And the amount of people that were like, Anneke, what? And they thought I was pulling their leg because I was a senior, so everyone knew me at that point. I'm like, I'm not kidding. Like, and yeah, that phrase actually got a lot of people going. And now that all my friends who have been texting are like, do you guys know the Green Amendment? You guys can go support it this fall. And so they're all jazzed up. They're like, it's a real thing now. So we'll see what happens. But hopefully,
Just 1 month out, November 3rd, the people in New York get to vote. That would make them the 3rd state to have a constitutional
what is it called?
Right.
What is it? Proposal 2? Is that what it's called?
Pardon?
Like, what's it called? Like, what can people look for?
Well, when they go into the voting booth, they should frankly flip over their ballot and they will see on the back of the ballot that they have a right, that they will have the opportunity to vote for this right to clean water and air and a healthful environment. So they need to flip over the ballot, look for that and vote. And if you're not in New York, there are 13 other states where our Green Amendment movement is advancing. We've got Green Amendment proposals, and amongst the hottest moving states right now are New Mexico, where a Green Amendment would be powerful for addressing some of the environmental issues facing that state coming from industrial operations. The state of Hawaii, where it will be a very powerful contribution to some already existing protections that they have, and the state of Maine, where we have this incredible, amazing bipartisan advancement for the Green Amendment. There are other states too, but those are some real hot states to watch right now.
Yeah, so I think those are all. I don't really have any updates. So shall we close?
So we should close. What is this? Green Jeans, episode number 2.
Episode number 2. Sorry, guys. We're still getting the hang of this. Green Jeans, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. Again, if you like what we're talking about, if you are interested in learning more, you can go on Instagram. So the Instagram is at Green Amendments. I think it's also at Green Amendments on Twitter. If you want to check out everything that Maya's talking about, see if your state is one that has a Green Amendment proposal, go to www.forthegenerations.org. And if you're interested in learning more about Maya personally, her Instagram and Twitter is at Maya, M-A-Y-A-K Van Rossum, all one word, all lowercase.
And Anneke, if people want to send us a message about what we're talking about or what we should be talking about, where do you think they should send it? We haven't figured that one out either.
I would say DM the Instagram, the For the Generations Instagram. We don't have an Instagram for this, and I don't think we're gonna make
No, because, we want to bring people back to our Green Amendment movement. But for those who don't know, DMing, direct messaging, see how savvy I am on social media. We'll get our social media act together soon. But for now,
Our
those are
social
your
media
options.
act is together. Don't worry. We just don't. For the generations, that's where all the cool information is. That's where this podcast will be shared. Also, Maya's other organization is you can go to www.DelawareRiverKeeper.org to follow Delaware Riverkeeper Network. Since Maya is the head of 2 organizations, just FYI, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So if you want to get in the get involved in ending fracking in the fossil fuel industry, it's DelawareRiverKeeper.org. If you want to get involved in securing a constitutional right to pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and healthy environments in every state across our nation, and ultimately at the federal level, it's www.forthegenerations.org. Both of those websites will get you to me, will get you to the movements, and will get you involved. So awesome. And talk to you next week.
Bye.